Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome back. Today we are here with some sell high or keep players. Oh, also don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to. If not, whatever. But anyways, these are guys that I'm going to talk about that I've seen requested a lot in my Discord or in the comments. A lot of people have been asking about, or if they're just people that I think people are just generally wondering if they should sell high on or if they should keep these players. We'll just go ahead and get started with Lauri Markkanen. Lauri, to me personally, huge surprise coming into this season so far. I mean, the Utah Jazz in general, just nobody really saw this coming. If we're looking at his season average, he's averaging around 41 fantasy points per game. Last 7 days, that's up to 47 fantasy points per game. And as a whole, obviously, I don't think he's going to average around 48, but I honestly think that what we're seeing out of Lauri so far this season is the kind of production he's going to be sustaining. I really don't see any statistical anomaly that's like sort of serving as an outlier that he couldn't really keep up for the rest of the season. He's averaging around 22, 9, and 3, shooting about 51% from the floor, which is a bit higher than his career average. But if we look at his 3-point percentage, that's down to 30%, and he's a career like 36% shooter. So overall, I mean, I really think this production is sustainable, barring like a trade. But I mean, as I always say, you can't really predict a trade and sort of base your trades off of that. So, anyways, I do think this is a keep on Lauri Markkanen. I mean, unless someone is really gonna grasp on that he's going to average 47 fantasy points per game. Obviously, that's a bit high, even for someone that's playing as well as Lauri is, but I don't know if it's Lauri or Lauri. I'm kind of just butchering his name back and forth. But anyways, I would definitely recommend keeping Lauri Markkanen if you have him on your team. If someone's going to try to, if you can sell high on him, then I mean you might as well go for it. But I don't think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to give you, what you're looking for. I don't think anyone's giving you like an upper echelon fantasy player in return for Lauri Markkanen. But if we go ahead and look at the Yahoo recent trades involving Lauri Markkanen, we can kind of give an idea of what his value is at right now. I mentioned this in my previous video when I was talking about buy low players, so if you're interested in this website, I'll definitely leave a link in the description. It's just a very helpful tool for sort of seeing what guys are being traded and what their value is right now. So if we look at recent trades involving Lauri Markkanen, there hasn't been like too many crazy ones as of late. Some trades that I see here is someone traded him and Ja Morant for Giannis, which, I mean, that's definitely a debatable one. If we just go ahead and look at like some straight 1-for-1 trades, I mean, someone traded him for RJ Barrett, which is just a joke. There's a trade here, someone traded Lauri for LeBron. I mean, that's just a bit absurd to me, but if you could get LeBron for Lauri, I mean, I would definitely do that. Another one, someone traded him for Tyrese Halliburton. So, I mean, like I said, there is a possible world where you can sell high on Lauri to get like a LeBron or a Tyrese Halliburton. Someone traded him for De'Aaron Fox here. Any of those 3 trades I would do. Another one here that's a little bit interesting is Lauri for Cade Cunningham. That one I could honestly go either way on. I think I would probably rather have Lauri, but I mean, definitely just a matter of opinion on there. But yeah, this kind of gives you an idea, like, if you do want to sell high on Lauri if he's in your league. I mean, you can get a LeBron, maybe a Halliburton, a De'Aaron Fox. It's worth inquiring. It's just in my personal opinion, I can't see a lot of people, being sold on that. I mean, this is Markkanen's first season sort of having this kind of fantasy production. If we look at his projections, they were way lower than this. Last season, he was only averaging around 27 fantasy points per game. His projections for this year were like 34. So if you don't think he can maintain this, I mean, maybe you do want to take advantage and sell high right now. But personally, I do think his production is going to stabilize like upwards of 40 fantasy points per game, and I'm not expecting a significant drop-off. So for that reason, I'm advocating for a keep. But if you want to try to shop him, go ahead. All right, moving on to the next player is Buddy Hield. Off rip, I think this is a huge sell high, in my opinion. If I had Buddy Hield on my team, I would be shopping him to every other team in the league, trying to, take advantage of the increase in his value that we're seeing right now. If we're looking at his stats, I think the main thing is the field goal percentage. On his career, he's like a 43% from the field kind of guy because, I mean, most of his shots are threes, but in the last 7 days, that's all the way up to 53%, and even on the season, it was up to like 49% from the field, which I personally just don't think is too sustainable for Buddy Hield. I think we are just witnessing a bit of a hot stretch of him right now. In terms of his peripheral stats, I mean, nothing has really changed. He has had 2 steals for the last, 3 games, which, I mean, isn't something that's that you're going to consistently get from Hield. I mean, he usually averages less than a steal per game, so definitely not something to rely on in terms of his fantasy production. If we look at recent trades involving him, there haven't been too many, so I think if you're going to make a trade with Buddy, it might be as like a 2-for-1, like if you trade another player with Hield to sort of take advantage and get a better player, if you can combine him with someone. I think that's something that I would definitely consider exploring. I mean, on the season, he's averaging 35 fantasy points per game right now. The last 7 days, he's averaging 42. And even the last 15, he's averaging 41. So I don't think this is sustainable for Buddy Hield. I really am not expecting him to keep up this kind of production. maybe you think I'm wrong and you want to keep him, by all means, completely entitled to do that. But I just really don't see these kind of numbers coming from Buddy Hield for the rest of the season. So I would definitely try to sell high on him before, he eventually starts to come back down to earth and maybe starts averaging around low 30s in fantasy points per game. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and move on to the next player. All right, next up we have Tobias Harris. He is someone who, again, I think is a sell-high player right now. If I had him on my team, I would be shopping him around all over the places, and any 2-for-1 trades, even some 1-for-1 trades we'll go ahead and talk about, I think are some great deals for Tobias Harris right now. If we look at his last 7 days stats, he's averaging around 44 fantasy points per game, and even with a greater sample size of the last 15 days, he's averaging around 38 fantasy points per game. This is way too high for Tobias Harris to sustain this kind of production. If we look at his recent game log, I mean, the Sixers have been missing Harden. They've been missing Embiid. Harden's going to be out for the next month. So maybe if you want to hold on to Tobias Harris for, another 2 weeks or so, then you can try to package him off because he might have some pretty solid production for, the foreseeable future. But, I mean, you just got to keep in the back of your mind, the closer that Harden's return date becomes, the harder it's going to be to try to sell high on Tobias Harris because people are going to be aware of that fact. But, yeah, I'm just really not expecting this level of production to continue out of Tobias Harris. He just hasn't been that solid for fantasy ever since he's gotten to the 76ers whenever James Harden and Embiid are both playing. And even when Embiid's playing, I mean, he's still, now that Tyrese Maxey's sort of taken that next step as being, the number 2 option behind Embiid in Harden's absence. You're looking at a third option, Tobias Harris, that, he's pretty, solid in the rebounding category, but other than that, not a lot of value there, so definitely look ahead and try to sell high on Tobias Harris if you can. Like I said, I would try to do it as soon as possible. Wouldn't really want to wait, and then, James Harden's return comes back, like I already mentioned, and then you can't really get a good trade for him. So if we look at recent trades involving him, he was traded for Jimmy Butler 1-for-1. That's insane to me. Some other trades here, he was traded with Jonas Valanciunas for Anthony Davis. I think I honestly would rather have AD in that kind of situation. A lot of trades with him are 2-for-1, so there's one here with Tobias Harris and Ivica Zubac for Gobert. That's another trade that I'm a big fan of. Tobias Harris and Trey Jones for Zion. That one's just fucking stupid. There's no one that's going to actually make that trade. Some of these trades are just whack. And then we have Tobias Harris for Miles Turner, who I think I would honestly rather have over Harris as well. So that kind of gives you an idea of where I think Harris's value's at the moment and where I think it's going to go in the season. I'd expect him to average low 30s for fantasy points again, which is pretty similar to what he averaged last season. He ended up averaging around 33 fantasy points per game, so I would definitely expect that kind of trend to continue. I don't really see any reason to expect that he's going to average the high 30s that he's had the past 15 days, and even the 40 that he's averaged the last 7 days. There's no way in hell that that's going to maintain itself, in my opinion. So that's going to do it for Tobias Harris, and I'll get on to the next player. Next up, we got Nick Claxton. He is someone that I, too, would probably consider a sell-high player right now. If we're just looking at the recent numbers, I mean, it's fairly obvious as to why. His statistics have been, exceeding what I thought he was going to be averaging on the season. He's just been getting a lot of easy dunks at the rim, playing with Ben Simmons, KD, and Kyrie. But, I mean, the last 7 days, he's averaging around 44 fantasy points per game, which is just insane. There's literally no way in hell Nick Claxton kind of maintains that kind of production. He just had a really solid game a few nights ago against Charlotte, had another nice game against Washington. But you've got to remember, his numbers are going to be a bit elevated right now because Kyrie is going to be missing some time. I assume he's going to be coming back into the lineup at some point, but again, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, he's averaging around 3 blocks per game the last 7 days. On the season, he's averaging around 2.5 blocks per game, which I don't think is going to maintain itself. I think he will have, a solid amount of blocks, but 2.5 is just a bit much, even for someone like Claxton who does have that kind of blocking ability. But yeah, I would definitely recommend selling high on Claxton right now. I just think his production recently is just superseded what I think he's going to have. Will he maintain on the season? He's averaging around 35 fantasy points per game. Could he maintain that? I mean, you could maybe talk me into it. I do think it would probably drop a little bit down towards 33 fantasy points per game, then maintain at 35. But like I said, I could definitely be wrong there. And if we just look at some recent trades involving him, I mean, someone got Michael Porter Jr. for him, Zach LaVine, someone got Jarrett Allen for him in a 1-for-1 trade. Those are all guys that I am way more confident in than Nick Claxton to kind of maintain this kind of 35 fantasy point per game plus production. So I definitely think if you can pull off any trades like that for guys of those kind of values, I think that's a great deal in my opinion. So that's going to do it for Nick Claxton. I think this is a sell-high player, and yeah, that's all I got to say about him. All right, so the last player I want to talk about is OG Anunoby, and I just want to take a minute to reflect on that. ESPN posted an article talking about waiver wire pickups, and they were like, pick up Chris Boucher, and he just dropped -4 in their game against Chicago. So any chance to shit on the ESPN experts, I will happily take, because it's really just too easy at this point. But anyways, OG Anunoby is a player that I am a little bit confused on what to do with myself. I don't have him on any teams, but I've seen a lot of questions involving him, and I've had to have like a pretty deep think about what I would do if I was an OG Anunoby owner. Personally, I mean, his numbers from the last like 15 days pretty much are nowhere near sustainable. He's averaging around like 44 fantasy points per game. The last 7 days he's averaging around 54 fantasy points per game. And the only reason I'm not sure whether to designate him as like a sell high or keep kind of player is just because we haven't got like an updated report on the Pascal Siakam injury. If Pascal is going to miss an extended period of time, I do think OG could potentially can maintain the average of like a 40 fantasy point per game like scorer. I mean, on the season he's up to around 39 fantasy points per game, but that is pretty much just due to like this elevated run he's just been on like the last 5 games before tonight. I mean, we had 51, 53, 52, 58, the last 4 games, excuse me. So yeah, if we're just looking at shit like that, like there's literally no way that's going to maintain itself. OG was just on a hot streak, and he sort of came back down to earth tonight. He only had 17 against Chicago, and I mean, I do think he is a 35 fantasy point per game player at like the minimum. I think he's probably going to average at around 37 on the season. But for this, if Pascal is going to miss time, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets to the 40 mark. But for now, if I had OG, I would probably just keep him, sort of wait till we hear some news on Pascal, and then if it looks like he's going to miss an extended period of time, you hold on to him. If it looks like Pascal might be back in like a month or maybe after the 2 weeks when he gets reevaluated, then I would probably try to sell high on him while you still have a little bit of time. If we look at some recent trades involving OG, there really haven't been too many as of right now because, like I said, probably a lot of people are kind of confused on what they want to do with him and are probably waiting for more Pascal Siakam news. One trade I see here is someone traded him away for Cade Cunningham. If you can get Cade for OG, even though Cade's average for the season is a bit lower than OG's right now, I think I would 100% take that move. Like, personally, I would much rather have Cade on my team, even though he is only at 35 fantasy points per game right now. I think he's he's at 38, sorry, excuse me. So yeah, they're pretty much the same. I thought they were a little bit different, so my bad. But yeah, I would definitely rather have Cade on my team than OG for the rest of the year. So if you can make a trade like that, definitely recommend going for it. But yeah, I think, like I mentioned, wait for more Pascal news or an injury report. Maybe I'll make a video if we do get an update, just sort of talking about what I would do. But I've kind of given my opinion already. Maybe it was a little bit unclear, but I'll just kind of clarify and reiterate and just say, wait for Pascal news. If it looks like he's going to be back in a shorter period of time, try to sell high on OG. If he's going to miss an extended period of time, you might as well ride out the OG Anunoby production. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's video. Hope it helps you guys out in terms of making decisions involving trades, whether you want to sell high on some of these guys or keep them. Let me know what other videos you want to see in the comments below. And as always, I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.